Well, hello everybody. It's us
Hi,
again. We're back.
happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays. And we're going to talk about something that might help you to make your holidays even happier, which is telling the truth. Particularly, what we're going to be talking about is difficult truths that need to be spoken, but for various reasons, we often tend to choose not to. So we're talking about things that are important to us, feelings, thoughts, desires, needs, the vulnerable stuff that we would sometimes rather not express because it exposes us to things that we don't want to risk. We don't want to risk being vulnerable. We don't want to risk being judged or rejected, or we don't want to risk activating the other person or hurting their feelings. I mean, there's so many different things that can get in our way of choosing just to kind of keep things to ourselves if we feel like the outcome of stating that concern, that question, that request, that feeling, that need, whatever it is, that the outcome might cause something unpleasant between us or within each or one of us. And so we decide not to. And then a funny thing happens. The need to do that doesn't go away. It comes back again. And, then we have to kind of go through that same process again. And the more we put off expressing something that really needs to be communicated in our relationship, the more problematic it becomes, the more it gets in our way, the more it interferes with our ability to really make our relationship more meaningful, more trustworthy, more fulfilling. So we're going to look at that and see what we can do about it, right?
Yes,
Okay.
and I want to tell the listening audience a little story. And this is the story of Kim and Brandon, people that we know. Their names have been changed to protect their privacy. But one night, Kim and Brandon were sitting on the couch in their living room.
Just like we are
Yeah,
in
and
our living room.
Brandon asked Kim, if you met me now, would you still want to marry me? Really risky question. And there was a pause. It wasn't a real long pause, but to Brandon, it seemed like an eternity. And then Kim said, no, I wouldn't marry you now. We were very young when we got together. We were in our early 20s, and I didn't really know what relationships were like. I had a lot of romantic illusions. We're so different. I thought you'd become more like me. I thought my love would draw you to be more like me. And I want to reassure you, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not planning to separate or divorce from you. I'm committed to you, and I'm planning to stay with you forever. But if I knew now what I didn't know then, I wouldn't choose you. Now, Brandon was really hurt. He was stunned, but he wasn't completely surprised because he suspected that the romance and some passion and aliveness had been missing in their marriage for some time. But he was still really hurt and disappointed, and the reason that he asked is he was cruising for some reassurance from her. And he didn't feel reassured, even when she said, I'm not planning to leave you, I still love you, we're going to stay together. The next day, Kim talked to some of her women friends, and she told them about the incident. And two of the women said, I would have lied to my husband if he asked me. If he ever asks me, I'm lying. I'm not going to tell the truth, even though I feel the way you do, that I wouldn't make the same choice now that I'm a midlife woman. And I felt like that was such a sad commentary that when she went to her women friends for advice and support, they didn't encourage her to continue the dialogue with him, to give him some information about what she was longing for and take responsibility for seeing if the relationship could develop. Because they're saying that they would lie, they would candy coat the cesspool, that they would just cover it over and not want to hurt him or stir up a hornet's nest. It was such an incredible lost opportunity because they never talked about it again. And Kim had decided that he's a nice guy, he's a good guy, he's just a boring guy. And some of the other women friends said, yeah, my husband's boring too. Kim had decided that he doesn't have any inner life. It's not that he wasn't revealing his inner life to her, it's that he didn't have one. Now that's quite an assumption to make. And I think it was the fear on Kim's part to bring up the tough subject and continue dialoguing about it, and that Brandon was complicit too, because he was too afraid of feeling more hurt. And where he went is, nothing I can ever do is going to please her, so what's the point of trying? I thought it was just a very sad commentary, and I hate waste. I feel like they wasted a big opportunity.
Yeah, probably didn't look to her or to him like it was an opportunity. Probably looked more like it was a big risk. And we don't feel all that much inclined to take risks unless we really see the potential outcome that could really be valuable. See something, if I do choose to take this risk, I could really stand to gain something big from it. And sometimes we don't realize that there is a lot to be gained by revealing what's within us, even though we may be focusing more on, yeah, but that could really be a can of worms, and that could really be something that could cause some major problems here. So when our focus is on what we're afraid it could contribute to, rather than what could be gained, we can very easily talk ourselves out of telling the truth. And what I find interesting about that situation is that they were both withholding their inner life.
That's right.
Because her inner life was one in which she wasn't as fulfilled and satisfied in the relationship as she had wanted to be. And she wasn't revealing that to him either. She wasn't really, she answered the question, but she didn't go into any of the details of what she was disappointed about and what might be possible to experience, which is only available if you're willing to tell the truth about what's true right now. Here's what's true right now. I have these feelings, I have these desires, I have these experiences of frustration or disappointment, or judgments about you, and I really feel like that's something that's getting in my way and in our way of being closer, and I'm kind of resigned to this.
I don't think that either one of them had the concept of sometimes you have to go down in the muck. Sometimes you have to make the descent. If you want to get to the higher realms, you don't necessarily go from the polite, comfort and security level to the higher realms. You have to go into the void. You have to jump into the chaos. You have to be with some uncomfortable truths and some difficult conversations and then come up.
Is that what people mean, you think, when they say, well, sometimes things have got to get worse before they get better?
Absolutely. And they didn't trust that if they went into the muck and leaped into the void and had the crucial, difficult conversations, that it could lead to something that would be really beneficial for both of them. Because, I talked to Kim about this, and she knows that there are other couples that are much happier than she is with Brandon. And her take on that is they just lucked into it. Do you know that it's a gamble? You're young, you don't know what you really want and where you're going and what kind of person would be suitable to you. So maybe you just think they're good looking and you make the choice about that, or they come from a nice family, or
So
they're
like
your
some people are
religion.
just lucky enough to have chosen the correct person.
That they got a husband that had depth, that was in touch with his inner life and was willing to share that. And so she thinks that some people are just lucky, and that she didn't have bad luck. She just had less good luck than some of these people who got a really interesting husband that was willing to go into his inner life. And the way she consoled herself is it could be a lot worse. He doesn't drink, he doesn't drug, he doesn't cheat on me, he's kind, he's generous,
Well,
he's hardworking.
One of the ways that it could be worse is, what we've noticed is that people do kind of tend to attract people who are fulfilling some of their conscious or unconscious needs and desires. So maybe, there's part of her that doesn't really want to get into these deep conversations about inner life. And, this is sort of enough. Well, it's not quite enough, but I don't want it to go too far.
Right.
Because, I don't want us to just, be sitting around processing all of our feelings all the time. So she's getting, in some ways, maybe what she wants, but not quite as much as she wants.
Because she didn't want to take the risk. To push it to see whether there might be more.
Yeah.
And I think that the man gets kudos for asking this incredibly poignant question of, would you still marry me? Yeah. To me, that means that the man's got an inner life.
Yeah, just the fact that he initiated that conversation to begin with.
And that it got shut down.
Right.
To me, that was only the beginning, and it could have taken them to a place where the relationship could have been a lot deeper and more meaningful.
Either one of them could have taken it further, taken it deeper, if they chose to. But interestingly enough, neither one of them touched it.
No, they both put the kibosh on it, which leads me to believe that maybe they don't have any agreement about being real with each other. Maybe they haven't created the kind of goodwill in the relationship in other areas that could take the difficult conversations. Because when she describes her relationship to me, she describes it as they've got some interests in common, and they do those interests in common, and they've got some friends in common, and they both, are dedicated to their families, and they spend a lot of time with their families and their interests. But this emotional intimacy that only comes with revealing your inner life and your feelings and your longings and your dreams and your visions, that's missing. Their life is about their activities and their kids and their friends.
Well, what's sad about it is that it sounds like both of them, to some degree, really would like at least some more depth and intimacy in the relationship.
Right.
I mean, if he didn't want it, he never would have asked that question. And she wouldn't feel the way she does if her need for that level of intimacy was being met.
Right. And the conversation aborted. Do you know? It didn't go to the place where it could. And I see it as a cautionary tale. It's a cautionary tale for us who settle for less. And when there's something in us that just won't quit because she really tries her best, she's very involved with her kids and her grandkids, and she's involved with the church and family, and she sits on this board, but it doesn't really hit the spot for what she's longing for. And she just reminds herself, oh, well, it could be a lot worse than this. And, it's a choice. I just feel sad when I think about this couple. They're probably going to stay together their whole life. and they will have missed a chance to take it deeper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the reasons that we wanted to address this topic is because we know that those ambivalent feelings about like wanting more and at the same time fearing that moving in that direction could be risky, emotionally or otherwise. That's not only is that common with a lot of people, but I think to some degree all of us have those mixed feelings about it, and we're not necessarily at the mercy of the fears or the concerns that keep us from stepping into what feels like the danger zone. That it is possible to create a more meaningful, fulfilling connection with your partner. And it often is motivated by an awareness that things aren't the way you really would like them to be. It's motivated by a feeling not of love, but more of dissatisfaction or disappointment, which is part of loving somebody, that there are moments and times when you're not 100% fulfilled and satisfied. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily their fault, but if you don't address that within yourself and within the relationship, then there really is very little possibility that things can deepen or improve. So most of the time it's those conversations that can lead to something more fulfilling often are motivated by a level of dissatisfaction or disappointment or resentment.
And one of the things that can really help to get our courage up to have the difficult conversations is to be grounded and centered and really anchored in the truth that we want the relationship to be better for both of us. That the bringing up this difficult topic is not because I want to be critical. It's not because I want to change you. It's not to make you bad and wrong. It's because I want us both to delight in this relationship and to have the best possible relationship that we can have. So if I'm going to bring the subject up, I want to do a little work with myself first to make sure that my come from is a good one. And I make the introductory remarks, and I've been doing that for decades, that invites you into the conversation by appealing to your enlightened self-interest that this could be something that could be really good for both of us, even if there's some unpleasant, uncomfortable moments. We want to live in the truth. We want to be emotionally honest with each other. We don't want to go for nice. We don't want to cover up. We don't want to avoid. We don't want to be in denial. We want to really be there at the edge, our growing edge. And I'm grateful to you for holding a high standard about that, because left to my own devices, I think I would have gone more for the comfort and security. And that's why this story that Kim told me means so much to me, because I think I maybe would have veered off in that direction more than I have. But you invited me into finding the courage to speak the really important truths, and that you wanted me to bring them to your attention and not to harbor them and have them leak out in the form of resentment or just the relationship going flat and kind of lifeless.
Well, I want to underscore the need to create what you referred to as that feeling of goodwill in the relationship. That feeling that there is, because it's almost like a security net, like a safety net. It's that feeling of safety that even if we do slide into some difficulties or some uncomfortable feelings or thoughts, that we've got this foundation here that's going to serve us to insulate us from a total disaster here. We trust that if these difficult feelings come up, we can acknowledge them and work through them, and and that everything that we're saying is coming from a foundation of trust and goodwill and honesty. When you don't have that trust in your partner's basic intention, when you don't have that trust in their basic feelings of care and love, then it's much harder to take that risk.
Mm-hmm.
And that foundation doesn't get built without taking some risks.
So that spirit of goodwill, I'm really glad that we have such an abundant goodwill account, that you know that when I bring up something that I'm dissatisfied about, that you know that I always have a worthy intention in bringing it up for us both to benefit. There's so many ways to build the goodwill, to keep agreements, to be emotionally honest, to not allow things to slide away that are important to talk about. Touch, words of affirmation, the way we spend our time together. These are all ways to include goodwill that's abundant, so that when we hit a little rough spot, that's all it is. It's just a little rough spot. It's disruptive, but there's so much more going on in the relationship that can stand the disruption. So you've held a high bar about being honest, and there are ways that we can speak to each other that are without the blame and judgment, and that we can bring it to our partner's attention in a way that's compassionate and kind, but sometimes there's an element of tough love in there.
Yeah, I think that a very important part of those conversations is the very beginning. And the way we introduce our desire to have the conversation, or whether or not we do introduce that desire or just plunge into it, makes a big difference. And we've kind of talked before about how the 4 most terrifying words for any man to hear from his partner is, "We need to talk." And that's kind of usually the tone that it's presented in. And it doesn't sound like a particularly inviting invitation. It kind of sounds more like a threat, like, oh geez, what have I done now? And so we're already starting off on a bad foot. And but it is better than saying nothing. So sometimes that is a step in the right direction, but you want to go further than that, and see if you can really speak it in a way that invites the other person to see this not as a judgment or a threat that they're making, that you're making, but that they see it as a gift that you want to give to the relationship.
And the way we wrap up the conversation can really sweeten things up too, because when we have these difficult conversations, there's a lot of unpleasant feelings in there. And if we wrap up the conversation when it gets, a bit much, we can draw a boundary and say, that's enough for now. We can resume this later. And thank you for being honest with me. And I think it's really important that we discuss this. And I want to continue the dialogue about this subject, because we have a lot of dialogues about some of our hot trigger subjects. But thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being honest with me. Thank you for showing up and paying attention. Thank you for hanging in there with me. And then be sure that we reinforce each other that this is a good thing that we're doing, and that we're getting more skillful in being able to deal with difficult truths, because they can enliven our relationship when we bring them forward. Now, you have a challenge that you're offering as a offering, to the group this week?
I do?
Yeah, you said you wanted to give them the opportunity to do a little homework home play.
Mm-hmm. Is it time?
Yeah, this would be the good time.
Okay. So see if you can bring to mind, this is probably not going to be too difficult for most of us, bring to mind something that at some point you have thought to yourself, I would really like my partner to know this, or I really hope that we can talk about this, because it's something that's on my mind and I don't seem to be able to shake it. It could be a concern, it could be a desire, it could be a fear, it could be a request, it could be some feedback that you want your partner to have about some aspect of your experience that you have chosen not to reveal to him or her, out of the concern that things could get shaken up, or you might upset the apple cart, or feelings could get hurt, or somebody could get angry, or better to let sleeping dogs lie. Let's not, let's not push things here. There's tons of different rationales that we have to justify withholding things that really need to be spoken. So see if you can come up with one of those things that maybe still needs to be expressed.
And you don't have to be limited to a romantic partner. If you have a sibling or a parent or a close friend and there's something incomplete that's stirring around in you, even if it's old, we always say there's no statute of limitations about getting complete on your incompletions.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when
how long
this was
it is
formulated.
If it's still, pressing on you, it's not too late to deal with it now.
So here's the important part of this process. That before you open your mouth and say anything to this person, and you can say it verbally, you can say it on the phone, you can say it, don't say it in the text, because you need to have some interaction. But before you say anything at all, set up the conversation to get agreement from them. That there's something that I just would like to share with you or check in with you about, and I was wondering if this is a good time for it. That's a fairly neutral invitation that isn't likely to activate somebody's defensiveness. Well, not too much of it anyway. So see if you can get agreement, and then before you actually start talking about your concern or offer your question or your request, whatever form it takes, get yourself straight. In other words, really get clear about what it is that you're hoping to have happen, and in your own mind, maybe you can rehearse a little bit and just see if you can put it in a way that the person you're talking to doesn't feel blamed or judged or criticized, but that you're speaking it from this commitment that you have to the relationship, to want it to be as clean and as trustworthy and as honest as possible, and to really describe your feelings and your desires and your concern, as opposed to focusing on what it is that you think the other person is doing or has done that has made this problematic. So really, focus your intention in that, and try to speak in a way that isn't going to activate their feelings of being judged or their feelings of defensiveness.
It is amazing how much truth-telling we can get away with when we come from a place that is loving, that is caring, that is compassionate, that is considerate. So you wouldn't necessarily say these words, but the come from is, you're special to me. The come from is, I wouldn't bother sticking myself out on a limb like this. if the relationship didn't mean something to me. It's because you're so special to me. It's because I value what we have. It's because I want it to be the best it can possibly be. That's why I'm having this conversation, inviting you into this exploration with me, because I value what we have so much and want it to be fabulous. So that's a gift for you in the holiday season, should you want to open it and use it. We are going to be back with you next Thursday at 12:30 Pacific time. It will be after Christmas, so we'll have some of the hullabaloo and the hubbub of Christmas behind us. And we have a little Bloom talk for you on sex. And it's lovemaking can be transformative. Okay.
So,
And you're going to announce the ebooks this time. We've got ebooks for you if you want.
Yeah. We've got 3 ebooks that are available for you. They're free, and all you need to do is go to our website, and that will give you information on how you can get them. So until then,
Bloomwork. Our website is bloomwork.com.
bloomwork.com.
Have a wonderful Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.